The end of cash bail in Illinois still having some waves reverberate in the criminal justice space, and the Illinois Supreme Court set to hear 2 of 3 cases today dealing with the Pretrial Fairness Act. Good morning, I'm Greg Bishop. It's Illinois in Focus Daily. Appreciate everybody tuning in, especially with the live show here each and every weekday morning at 8 o'clock. And as an associate editor for Illinois for the Center Square, we're on the ground in Springfield covering what happens. And one thing, obviously, that we keep a close eye on is, the legislative branch of government and then the executive branch of government, but we also take a look at the judicial branch of state government. And if you go to the Illinois Supreme Court website, you'll be able to see the docket today. And today's docket has 3 cases, and one of them doesn't deal with the Pretrial Fairness Act, but 2 of them do. And let's just take a look at the appellant's brief for case number 130866. This is the People, State of Illinois, appellee versus Antonio Cousins Jr. All right, this comes out of the 4th District of Illinois. And some of these, I think it's, at least gives you an understanding of how you can quickly review these types of legal, filings. But if you go through and you click on the brief, it gives you an overview, an index of sorts, and then it gives you the nature of the case here. So we'll likely be reviewing this tomorrow morning with Illinois in Focus here with the Center Square, and a story to be published promptly. Shortly thereafter, the Illinois Supreme Court meets at 9 o'clock and hears these cases. But let's just look at what the nature of the case is. Antonio Cousins Jr., defendant appellant, appeals from the written order entered following a hearing held pursuant to the Pretrial Fairness Act. All right, so the appellate court reversed the trial court's decision and remanded for further proceedings. What's the nature of the case? Issues being presented. The Pretrial Fairness Act requires the state to prove 3 elements to detain a defendant awaiting trial, right? Because just a bit more background here. Illinois is the first state to end cash bail statewide, meaning that if you get arrested for a low-level offense, you are going to be released from jail pending trial. You're innocent until proven guilty. Proponents of the Pretrial Fairness Act say that that's crucial, and it also makes sure that people of lesser means who don't have money to bail themselves out for low-level crimes, they could end up losing their job if they have to stay in jail until they have a trial. So clearly, there's an argument on that side, but on the other side, you've got some in the law enforcement community who think that this is only going to allow for more recidivism. It's going to allow for a lot of no-shows to courts, and there's been a lot of data and presentation with arguments on both sides using data, to make their points. But the Pretrial Fairness Act been around, obviously, with 2021 when it was passed as part of the Safety Act, and the Safety Act including the Pretrial Fairness Act, but it had an on-ramp, and then during that on-ramp to it being installed and implemented, no cash bail statewide, you had state's attorneys from across the state sue. It got mired in courts, and then it made all the way up to the Illinois Supreme Court, who delayed implementation of the Pretrial Fairness Act for them to deal with the issue. They heard the case. They then ruled that the Safety Act and the Pretrial Fairness Act is going to be allowed, and they started the implementation of it. So it's been in place, since was it 2023 September? Regardless, you've got no cash bail statewide. So in that issue of no cash bail, prosecutors, they have 48 hours to tell a judge this person's matches certain criteria. And then the judge makes a determination as to if that person can be released pending trial, or if they need to be held until trial. Now, the no cash bail provision, proponents say there's lower level crimes that are in the category of crimes where it's non-detainable. But the opponents of that say the threshold is too high, and there's certain crimes in that category that are problematic, and if we let people out, then it could be a danger to the community. So that's kind of where we're coming from here, is the interpretation of how this is being implemented. So back to this case, the first one that the Illinois Supreme Court's going to be hearing today, they're going to be looking at the Pretrial Fairness Act, where the defendant in this case says it requires the state to prove 3 elements to detain a defendant awaiting trial: a great presumption of guilt, a safety threat or flight risk, and that no conditions of release could mitigate that threat. When a court of review finds the state failed to meet its burden of proof as to one of these elements, must it remand for a hearing on conditions of release. So they're going to get into the minutia. We'll do what we can to distill that case down for you so you can understand that one. But that's not just the only case. They've got a second case they're going to be hearing dealing with the Pretrial Fairness Act. So we'll open this one up. And this is the people of the state of Illinois versus Tyrell Cooper. Again, overview of the case. Different case law it's going to be presented. When you get to the nature of the case, it says defendant was charged with aggravated battery with a firearm, aggravated discharge of a firearm, and unlawful possession of a weapon by a felon. At his first appearance on Saturday morning, the people filed a petition to deny pretrial release and were granted a continuance. The circuit court held the detention hearing on Monday afternoon and granted the petition. The appellate court reversed, holding that the circuit court failed to hold the hearing within 48 hours and defendant's first appearance, and remanded for the circuit court to order defendant's release. The people appeal from this judgment. No questions raised in the charging instructions. So the issues presented that we're going to hear about, whether the circuit court correctly concluded that it held the detention hearing within 48 hours of defendant's first appearance, whether even if the detention hearing was late, defendant's not entitled to release because the statutory timing requirement is directory rather than mandatory, and whether defendant forfeited his challenge to the timeliness of the hearing by failing to object. So again, some of the minutiae here, but that's important when it comes to this end of cash bail being presented. So we'll hear those arguments. We'll preview, again, what we did here, the preview, and then we'll review what happened tomorrow morning to better understand how the courts are going to handle these things. So a little bit of a preview here with the Illinois Supreme Court tackling these cases around the Pretrial Fairness Act. It's Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop. Wake up with us each and every weekday morning. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and be part of the program. Inside the chat room, there's a lively conversation, and you can also get the headlines in your inbox. Go to thecentersquare.com and register today. It's free.